The U.S. Navy has destroyed a Venezuelan vessel, killing all on board. Was this part of a strike on a drug trafficking organization, as the U.S. claims, or is this the first volley in a war against the state of Venezuela? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Now, slap that subscribe button if you appreciate this kind of content. It tells the YouTube algorithm that what I'm doing is actually good analysis. Now, the U.S. military has said that 11 people are killed in a strike on what they say was a drug boat coming from Venezuela. And I actually think that they are right. And I'll explain why I think so in a second. But the details are pretty sparse on this one. Now, President Trump has said that he actually authorized a strike against this vessel, right? In fact, he even released footage of the strike on his Truth Social account. We're going to show everything of the vessel. You can see this is a very simple speedboat, which is not uncommon to see it used in drug smuggling operations. You can see here that there's a large amount of cargo. Reportedly, there are 11 people on board this vessel, and the U.S. military, of course, having blotted out all of its time, date, and location information, but that's pretty standard operational security. There's nothing suspicious about that. And you can see the boat, right, just moving through Venezuelan waters. Now, one thing to note is that if you see someone moving cargo on a non-cargo ship like this, you can be reasonably certain that they are up to something no good. And the reason is because it is legitimate cargo. One, has to pass through customs. And two, it is really inefficient to ship goods this way. Cargo ships are ultra efficient. Space on cargo ships, because of economies of scale, is unbelievably cheap. I mean, think about it. If you've ever bought something from a drop shipper, right, where they have paid to ship that individual item across the world, it's usually manufactured in a place like China or Vietnam, and it is still affordable to ship that item for literally less than $10. That's how efficient shipping is. So the fact that a couple of bags of an unknown substance are being moved via this ship is a pretty good clue that this isn't, these aren't bags of wheat, right? And again, an open top speedboat also tells you something about the fact that they are trying to maintain a very low profile. This is as far as I can show you without showing you the strike itself. As you guys know, YouTube's rules about combat footage are unbelievably strict. That's actually one of the reasons why I launched my premium site, my version of Substack, called combatvetnews.com. I take combat footage, including combat footage sent exclusively to me from units on the front lines of Ukraine. For example, we just took a look at what is, to my knowledge, the first ever released footage of a Russian drone, a Gerbera drone, actually evading air defenses, possibly showing evidence of the AI systems in flight, right? So if you want to, of course, the link's in the description. Become a member, support me. But, right, on Truth Social, Trump said the strike resulted in 11 terrorists killed in action. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. And the Venezuela's communications minister, Freddie Nunes, suggested in a post on social media that the video shared by Trump was created by AI. Reuters conducted initial checks on the video, including a review of its visual elements using a manipulation detection tool, which did not show evidence of manipulation. Right? And what's funny to me is that the fact that this is the defense says that, and the fact that Nicolas Maduro's own Twitter account contains no information about this, right, to me says that this is probably legitimate. Why? Because if it was, let's say the Venezuelans decided to say, no, this was actually a fishing boat. These were just fishermen, right? They would say so. They would say this was a strike on fishermen, and that this was but that would imply that this was a hostile act against the Venezuelan state, requiring the Venezuelan government to respond. Instead, they're not taking the bait. They're saying this never happened, which is a fascinating take. To be like, this is just an AI video that you guys just generated out of nothing. And of course, the Pentagon has not released specifics about the attack. Again, not specifying what kind of drugs were on board, the quantity, or how the strike was carried out. Again, none of which they're probably going to be able to know without revealing sources and methods, because again, if you can sit there and go, oh, well, we know this had X pounds of drugs and was X type, that could out the U.S. military source on the ground, right? It could tell them which cell phones are being tapped or who is actually providing information to the U.S. military, which is kind of self-defeating. But you also have the fact that, again, the Venezuelan government not taking out the stance that, hey, this was a civilian vessel, this wasn't a drug vessel, which is, believe it or not, technically true, right? Just like if I get in my car and I have an open container in it, I'm violating the law. Is it a civilian vehicle? Yeah, it's still a civilian vehicle, even if I'm transporting something illegally in it. And so this, I think, is actually even more interesting because it implies that the Venezuelans know this really was a drug vessel and that they probably even either don't want to take the bait to be, again, to have to prove to the U.S., hey, we're willing to fight you, which the U.S. is like, yeah, try us, right? The Venezuelans are not stupid. You don't stay in power as long as Maduro has in a failing, unpopular state by being stupid and taking stupid risks. So the Venezuelans are not going to take the bait and say, yeah, this was a civilian vessel. This is an unprecedented strike against our people. Because then the next thing he has to do, if you're a strong man, is you have to, well, be strong. And the Venezuelans don't want to do that. And so they're simply saying this never happened. And remember, Maduro has said, I work against drug trafficking organizations. I counter drug organizations. So the fact that this was obviously a drug smuggling vessel, he doesn't want to be someone who puts his foot down and says, I'm going to stand up for these drug traffickers. That's actually validating everything that people say that he is, right? That the U.S. says he is, which is, again, someone who's willing to go to war to defend drug traffickers over his own people. And so it's interesting because the U.S. really is trying, it seems, to box the Venezuelans into a politically unadvantageous corner where they have to either choose between defending drug traffickers or simply taking this strike on themselves like a punk, looking weak in front of their people. And instead, they've chosen this third way, which is to simply say, this never happened. This is fake. You don't know what you're talking about. And again, we in the U.S. know that this isn't really how the U.S. military operates. We have the capabilities to strike targets however and whenever and pretty much wherever we want. We don't need to fake like we blew up a vessel. But the Venezuelans, right, they have a pretty tighter controlled media space. And therefore, they actually have a chance to shape the narrative about this, and they probably will. So will this result in a huge war between the U.S. and Venezuela? No, because the Venezuelans are simply following the playbook of saying this never occurred in the first place. Anyway, guys, thank you so much, as always, for being members. Hit the subscribe. Check us out at combatvetnews.com. And, of course, a huge thank you to our lieutenant and colonel tier members. Let me get you guys up here real quick because, of course, I appreciate you all so much. Right? Dan M., Petch Toro, Henry Russier, Ida Skycall, Chris Rossi, AL90, all of our lieutenant tier members. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.